This episode briefly mentions suicide and school shootings. If you or someone you know is in crisis or having suicidal thoughts, call 988 or text 741-741. If you are outside of the United States, please visit www.iasp.info/suicidal thoughts for resources in your country.
Welcome to Pages from the Dark Side, the monthly book club podcast with the specialization in spooky. I am your host, Dylan Ludwig, aka Mr. Hyperaware, sometimes here and there. And with me, as always, is my lovely wife and co-host,
Alyssa Ludwig, also known as the Earbud Bookworm.
And this month, we are here to talk about, we're back with Stephen Graham Jones.
Yes, this is going to be our second, so we can start a playlist now.
One of our favorite authors here.
Yes.
And we are talking about his most recent book, I Was a Teenage Slasher. We are doing this in preparation for his newest book coming out this month, The Buffalo Hunter.
Yes.
Which comes out in about, from the time that we are recording, it's about 8 more days.
Yes. Alyssa from the future here. I cannot believe that we forgot to mention that on the day that we are releasing this, it is actually our anniversary. We have been married for 6 years now.
And we have that on pre-order, and that pre-order is going to be really fucking cool.
I'm so excited.
Because we're getting the Barnes & Noble signed copy that also has documented letters from the actual historical event, which is the
that
Black
inspired
Feet,
it. Yeah,
that inspired the entire book. By the way, before we get started, I meant to bring this up. If you go watch our World War Z birthday episode, spoiler, that's what the birthday episode is. I meant to bring up that when I mentioned that the original script for the movie version of that could have qualified for Best Picture. I meant to also say that there might be one coming out this year that could possibly challenge that idea instead. Mm-hmm. And that's if the trailers are as good as this movie, make this movie as good as it looks, 28 years later has a chance at being the one that challenges that belief.
It does look pretty good.
And we'll see it when it comes out. We'll see for ourselves. So I just want to throw that out there. But back to Stephen Graham Jones here.
Yes.
So we've already mentioned that we met him briefly at...
Lovely person, by the way.
Very lovely person.
Absolutely lovely.
Very wonderful to listen to and just kind of hear his life story and his life experiences.
Very wonderful to look at.
Yeah. Somebody's crushing over here.
A little bit.
He answered a question of mine, which is basically, I asked him, because he does a lot of experimentation with his form and his stuff. And I asked him, is he conscious of that when he's doing it, if it just comes out naturally? And he gave a pretty thoughtful response to, a question that, in my mind, I feel like doesn't compare well to what other people were asking. But,
yeah.
But, this is one of the books that we got signed. Yes. I showed it off on the last... If you watched our Only Good Indians episode, I showed off all...
I will link on YouTube.
Yeah, I showed off all the signatures in those books there, so I don't think there's a reason to really go back into that.
Yeah.
And we talked about our history with slasher movies and slasher fiction when we did our Final Girls episode, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was that one.
Yeah, it was that one.
Part of me was like, was it the Clown of Gorefield one? No, it was...
No, I think it was
the Final Girls episode.
I think it was the Final Girls episode.
So, yeah, we'll just kind of jump into it. Now, I will say, part of me was a little frustrated when this book came out because the premise of it was very close to a book that I'm working on writing, which is the whole kind of idea of a person who is body horror Cronenberg level transforming into a slasher.
Right.
I think I found out about that ahead of time through Adam Caesar's kind of recommends on it and on his Instagram, and I'm just like, uh-oh. And I got both very frustrated but also very excited. Frustrated because of that, but then also going, yeah, but if Stephen Graham Jones is doing it, it's got to be really good.
Right.
So I can't get mad at that.
Yeah, no, I know. I remember you being like, "Oh no," and I was like, "Well, okay, but there's always room for more."
I know.
There's room for other voices.
I know. Fortunately, it's distant enough that I think I could be okay with it. I won't narcissistically devolve into that because that's not what you're here for, are you?
I mean, we don't know.
I would hope to think that you're here because you like what we have to say about these books. Or if you just think that we're eye candy, then that's fine too.
Hey, or ear candy.
We're ear candy, and we're also sexy together. So
oh my god, I love you.
I mean,
I'm glad also that we sound better than in the last episode, because I sounded a little bit sick. You sounded way sick in the last episode.
that was, you know what, I feel bad too. Well, I don't feel bad necessarily, but I did feel frustrated because I went so fucking hard at what I wanted to talk about, because that was a subject I'm so passionate about, and then I had just a sinus infection and an ear infection just holding me back. So by the end of that recording, I was just like, I really hope that anything that I said makes sense here.
No, I think it did. But yeah, we've definitely been playing sickness bingo over here. I think we got a blackout card at this point.
Oh my god, weeks and weeks of that. Now,
truly,
kids are sick too, so we're probably gonna get sick again.
I know. Yeah, our oldest just had scarlet fever.
Yeah,
so that's fun. Didn't even realize that was still a thing.
I'm so ready to be done with it.
I know.
Speaking of sicknesses, let's talk about what happens in this book.
Yes.
This is the story of one Tully driver who was living in Texas in 1989, and he is very much an outcast sort of teenager in his high school. Not a lot of people like him. He only has like a couple of people that are like really one or two friends of his.
A couple friends. One like really close friend.
Named Amber, who is the one Native American character in here.
Right.
It is not the protagonist this time around.
Nope, not this time.
He's a little scrawny 17-year-old white kid. And through unfortunate circumstances, he ends up at a party and gets blackout drunk and makes a fool of himself by throwing up everywhere, including the pool. And what happens is that a couple of band geeks decide that they're going to torture him and bully him by exploiting the fact that he has a peanut allergy. So he almost dies at that party.
Right.
And it's only because of one of his former friends, but she used to babysit him even though they're like a year apart. And then also his best friend Amber save him with an EpiPen. Concurrent with this, a zombified slasher who was a former classmate of theirs who died trying to show off and to be initiated in with the cool kid crowd because he was trying to climb a pump jack.
Yeah, he was riding it basically.
He was riding a pump jack and then he fell and got crushed into it.
Yes.
And he comes back as a vengeful wraith zombie to exact vengeance. And in the process of this, some of his blood gets into a cut that Tully has when he's trying to escape this would-be massacre. And wouldn't you know it, that infects him, and he starts to become a slasher progressively through the book.
Who knew that becoming a slasher was a disease?
Yeah.
That's just I'm sorry. I love Stephen Graham Jones so much because I would have never even thought of that.
You know what?
I'm sure that idea was out there.
Yeah.
It's probably not his original idea, but I would have never thought of that.
It's interesting because you bring up that the idea that that slasherdom could all of a sudden become an infectious disease.
Right.
That's there, but I think what this is, it's a continuation of what he's really been dialed into doing a lot in recent years, which is kind of slasher deconstructionism,
right?
Which is not new. I mean, Scream movies have done that for years, especially the more recent ones. And we've had other stuff. We've had stuff like Cabin in the Woods and Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Things that kind of they deconstruct it, but they do it in a very much a parody sort of way. But what Jones is doing in the books is he's very genuine and serious with it, and kind of treats the slasher in a very mythical sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You see this really kick in with his Indian Lake trilogy, which I've got here. We've talked about,
and we'll definitely do an episode about that at some point.
Yeah, bookmark it. That one might even be a two-parter because there's a lot of ground that's got to cover on those ones. But what he's very much doing is very much what he has done with werewolves in his book Mongrels. And what I feel like we're going to see with Buffalo Hunter, him do with vampires, is he is treating the sort of the convergence of something that is mythic and something that is of the self.
Right.
With Mongrels, it's very much about the werewolf myth as um, a pinpoint in generational violence, and the idea of violence is kind of born into us, and we have to make the effort to kind of break away from that.
Right.
He does a very similar thing with this book here, because we're very much we're restricted to Tali's point of view. He's
Right.
writing this as this kind of confessional, or kind of like looking back on his life.
Right.
And he's writing it to...
Almost like a little memoir.
Yeah, he's writing it to Amber as sort of like his both an apology and his sort of interfacing with, or kind of not necessarily interfacing, but interrogating himself with what had happened.
Right.
And using the slasher mythology to do it, I think, is very interesting, because the idea of the slasher myth, really, there's two different versions of it, and you see it in the Indian Lake trilogy as well. The supernatural version, which is very prominent here, are vengeful wraiths.
Right.
Something has happened to them, they've been wronged, and they need to... They're basically coming back to punish whoever was responsible for it, both directly or even indirectly.
Right.
Jason Voorhees doesn't... he doesn't go after the specific camp counselors that weren't paying attention when he died. He just goes after... He's just like, well, if you're a camp counselor, you're on my list.
Right. Right.
Or if
Exactly.
Or if you're a horny teenager, you're on my list.
Right.
And then the other version is the very human slasher, who are... Their motives are kind of... We can't really quantify that, because psychopathy is very hard to quantify for somebody like us who doesn't have that sort of mental illness involved. Both occur in the Indian Lake trilogy, because you see the human version with Dark Mill South and Don't Fear the Reaper. But here is the former, and it's two different versions of it. One is the dead wraith that comes back with Jared Joss was, I think it was, because it was another like alliteration name, coming back to exact vengeance, and then Tali, who's very much alive, infected with this vengeful. I don't know if I would call it a virus, but it's definitely some sort of possession involved.
Yeah.
But that being said, how much of it is possession? How much of it is kind of his inner darkness and his anger manifesting itself to get revenge on people that had wronged him?
Right, right. Well, and I mean, you can kind of see the fact that he goes colorblind. So, I mean, it is almost kind of like a thing rising up within him at the moments that he needs it.
Yeah.
So it's not... I do still think it's kind of like an infection, obviously, because he got it through the blood transfer and all that.
Yeah.
But it definitely does seem like it's like two sides of the same person coming out.
Right.
And when he's, Tali, he's more in control of things, and he doesn't want to do these things. But then as things start to ramp up, he turns into, whoever... He doesn't have a name in that. He's just like
the slasher,
the belt man.
The belt man, yeah. Because that's an interesting sort of like turning the torture on the people that did it, because they had confined him to a chair with belts, and so the belts end up coming back and forming the mask that's on him, and then also just over his body, and
also become a murder weapon.
And becomes a murder weapon, which, by the way, I don't get very squeamish to gore very much. I'm pretty desensitized when it comes to that. There are
jump scares, though.
Yeah, I know, but
that's different.
But there are kills in this that fucking are painful to read.
Oh, yeah, the one with the belt.
The belt, yeah, which would.
Ugh.
It gave that kill and upgrade a run for its money.
Yes,
that one's
that's
quick,
exactly what I was thinking.
But this one's very drawn out.
Well, yeah, I mean, to slice through somebody's skin with a belt, that takes time.
And he's also not super strong, so he has to actually put effort into it as
right.
well. He has to put his whole body weight into it, basically. Yeah, he doesn't skimp on that. But I do think it's very much that's the secondary focus because that's the whole like we're gonna give people who are gonna read a slasher book what they want,
Right.
but we're also gonna kind of challenge the reader and go, are you sure that you're really enjoying this?
Oh yeah, no, right.
Because part of you wants to root for the main character because he is somebody who is bullied and he is somebody who is othered, but at the same time, like
his kills are.
They're not fun. And you at a certain point you kind of go, okay, I don't know that this person really deserved that.
Right.
Like, yeah, they're horrible people, but most teenagers are horrible people.
I mean, when you get right down to it, that's accurate.
Yeah, I mean,
having been a teenager at one point in my life.
Listen, this was a very. I'm gonna get real here. Like, this is a very cathartic book for me in a lot of ways because I was a very angry teenager growing up. I was somebody who was bullied, and I was somebody that had, I had not been able to identify that I had the mental illness of depression ahead of time, and I was very much. There's a certain period of time where I did fall into a lot of toxic thinking, a lot of, especially toxic masculinity thinking, taking wrong lessons from the movie Fight Club, shit like that, and that anger boils up to a point where you can't articulate it, which makes you angrier at that age. And there was a path where one could argue that I could have gone on a school shooter path. And I'm not proud to admit that, but it is the truth of it.
Well, and I think that it's important to kind of like accept stuff like that.
Yeah, I look back on my teen years with a lot of embarrassment.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
And I'm glad that I never reached that point of no return one way or another, because I was also a very suicidal kid as well.
Right.
And it was also one of those that I had that anger manifest because I had really no outlet for it either. I had nobody to talk to. My mom is definitely not one of those people that I could talk to. My brother's not one of those people. My dad, I've got dad issues. I definitely couldn't do that here. So reading this book, and he is talking about this a lot of these themes and a lot of this interfacing with your own darkness.
Right.
In a genre that is so up my alley. Like, slasher movies are one of my favorite horror genres. They're probably like top 3, I would say. Like, that, zombie fiction, and killer animal movies. Like, those would probably be my top 3.
You love the killer animal movies.
Well, we got an alligator poster like right there on almost every episode.
I know. I always cover it up with all our book covers and stuff. Right.
Killer animal movies are fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like, that's what I get out of them. But slasher movies definitely are a part. Like, I'm wearing the shirt that got me into horror in the first place. That holds a special place in my heart. And to see somebody that not only has a lot of reverence for the genre itself, but is also willing to challenge a lot of what we associate and normally get entertainment out of the genre with, is really cool to see. He did that with the Indian Lake trilogy in spades, but it's really hard to recommend that to people because there's a lot going on in those books that are more than just taking a look at slasher mythology and deconstructing it, because it's a bigger story.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's a trilogy.
Yeah, and I consider that trilogy his opus. But I do think that for a singular novel, for me to recommend, like, hey, if you have a problem with his prose and other stuff, this is the one that I generally will recommend to people.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get into.
Yeah, I felt like it was.
Which is so weird because the horror lit subreddits are so divided on not just this book, but his writing in general. Some people just cannot get into it.
Well, I mean, and people have that with Stephen King too, and he's like considered one of the masters by a lot of people, but there are a lot of the other people that are like, his stuff's trash. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I feel like you're going to get that with almost any author.
I get the feeling that people will say that with Stephen King to be kind of iconoclast about it and be like, contrarian of like, I don't like things that are popular.
I mean, that's possible. I have no idea. I think there are some people that genuinely don't like his writing, though.
I will admit that I'm not a Dean Koontz fan.
I think I've only read one Dean Koontz, and I did not like it.
Yeah, I read his Frankenstein, and I'm like, no, bro.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't like James Patterson either. I know he's, like, super duper popular, but also he doesn't write his own books.
You know, everybody I've talked to who, when I bring up James Patterson, are like, yeah, I don't get it either. I just go, but how the hell is he one of those...
Clearly.
How the hell is he the most popular author to find in, like, grocery stores and stuff
Clearly
like
somebody
that?
likes him. He's got so many books, and they sell really well. I don't know.
I think he's become a bigger name than Stephen King, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But...
Anyway, we're digressing,
yeah,
as we do.
But, what'd you take away from this book when you read it? Because you had already been a fan of him, and then this one kind of came along, and you were like, oh my god, this might be my favorite of his.
Yeah. I mean, what do you mean, what did I get out of it? It was a good book. That's what I got out of it.
But, like, you know, how did you respond to it when you read it? Like,
I mean, I cried.
that's the weird thing, is that for a book called I Was a Teenage Slasher, the ending of this breaks your heart.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because one of the other big themes of this is...
Sorry, I almost sneezed.
It's okay. One of the other big themes of this is, you know, a lost young love and a friendship that drifted apart. No matter, you know, you try your best, but you know you can't save it ultimately, right? Because eventually, you know, there's a lot of like playing with the idea of like, well, he's the slasher who ends up being the final girl. Of course, it's going to be Amber.
Of course, it is.
Like
the fact though that when I first read this book, I didn't pick up on that.
Really?
I did not. I mean, I did before they revealed it, but it took a lot longer than it should have.
I guess.
Like, I feel like there were so many clues dropped along the way, and I just ignored all of them.
Yeah.
Up until a certain point, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute.
I also love that the little like kind of cue-ins that he's becoming a slasher are very much not entirely physical, but very metaphysical.
Yeah.
The fact that when he pulls a knife out, it has to make a sound.
Sting!
You know,
even when he pulls it out slowly.
Yeah.
I love the way he writes that, where it's like, when he pulls it out slowly, he's like, sting!
He draws
no
it out,
exclamation point. Like, he literally says, no exclamation point. I love that.
And that's the other thing, is that with the prose that he's experimenting with, they make it very clear that Talia is writing on a word processor, so there's no italics, there's no bold, no...
Oh, it's not even a word processor. It's a order report thing from his job.
Yeah. It's so funny that somebody asked that question at the Q&A, and I'm just like, I mean, they mention it in the first chapter.
Yeah, but like, I think her reasoning for asking the question was like, did he do it on purpose as like a challenge for himself.
Oh, yeah.
As a writer.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, having listened to a lot of horror authors talk, I think a lot of them like to kind of get a little weird with the format.
Yeah.
You know, Paul. We'll talk about this later in the year when we do our next Paul Tremblay episode. Spoiler there. But that book that we're going to cover is very, very experimental.
Yeah, and I listened to that one on audiobook.
Yeah.
I'd really like to go through and look, because my plan had been to read the physical book while I listened to the audiobook, and then I ended up listening to the audiobook because I didn't.
Damn good audiobook.
Well, I didn't get it done during winter break, and so I knew that it was going to be, you know, me listening in the car while I'm driving and stuff. So
yeah. And Jones is very much always experimenting with format. And I think, you know, when I asked this question, I really should have been, you know, cognizant of like, well, some people just like to do it because it's fun to do.
Right.
This one, I do think there's the purpose of this is very much about, you know, self-analysis in a lot of ways. It's, you know, it's somebody reflecting back on their life and reflecting on the things that they're ashamed of and trying to reconcile that with, you know, somebody that they hope is listening.
Right.
And, you know, the thing is, you know, we bring up that Amber is the final girl. How does Amber beat him in the end?
With fucking peanut butter.
Peanut butter.
Because he's allergic to peanuts.
Because in the end, the thing that connects him to being human is what ends up stopping his rampage.
Right.
And it leads to just this bitter ending well, I don't know if it's bitter or bittersweet, but
I think it's bittersweet.
because he very
personally.
much is like, I need to stay away from you, but I hope that you're doing well, and I hope that you've lived your life. And we do see that she has moved on and has had a child, because this is like, he's writing this years separated
Yeah.
from when the incident happens, and he basically tells her, like, if you do find me, I have a jar of peanut butter that I'm going to
I mean, he
put
does.
and he does do it.
Because she does find it, because her car ends up at the junkyard that he's working at.
Yeah, and it's just
because it's like 7 hours away from where they grew up.
And he just coats himself in it,
and he eats it.
And he eats it and dies. And it's just like, fuck, dude. Like,
Yeah. Well, because he found out that when it's just on his body, he's still alive in there.
yeah, he has to consume it.
And so his assumption, anyway. I mean, he might have left it open for a second one. Who knows? Because I don't think so.
I don't think so. This
But-
feels very open and shut.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, do we go to ratings on this? Because
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've said a lot of what needs to be said here.
Yeah. Listen, I mentioned this already. Like, I think the Indian Lake trilogy is one of his big masterpiece. Like,
Yeah.
of a trilogy of stuff to put together. I don't think anything compares to that. I've heard from the advanced readership that Buffalo Hunter x Hunter is like, it's shaping up to be his masterpiece, possibly.
Yeah, I am excited to read it. I'm so psyched.
But until then, this is probably my favorite solo novel that he has written. That is just one story, because I was getting close to that with Only Good Indians. Only Good Indians, the meanness of that story kind of kept me from really falling in love with it and really wanting to keep coming back to it.
I get that.
I want to keep revisiting this one over and over again.
Yeah.
I love it. I recommend this one to people who who otherwise can't really get into Stephen Graham Jones. And I would say, like, Mapping the Interior is one of my that's my favorite of his novellas.
Okay. I
Because
still haven't read that one.
because that one's only about 120 pages or something like that. Night of the Mannequins is also great. That's a great kind of precursor to what this is. And that one's also really short as well. But as far as, like, his long form, well, not long form, but, like, full novel fiction.
Full novel, yeah.
This is my favorite of his. We'll see if he tops it with the next one.
Yeah.
But until then, this is 5 skulls, no question. I don't think I've read a slasher book that quite compares to this. And I've read a lot of good slasher books. Like, I love Final Girl Support Group. I love Clown Cornfield. I'm excited for that Clown Cornfield movie, actually.
Yeah.
Because we finally saw the trailer for it. But also, this is one where I'm like, I don't think you could do a film adaptation of this.
No, I don't think so.
Especially
I mean,
that knife scene, the sensibility of filmmaking is to put a dramatic sound effect to everything.
right.
So, like, that alone, it's like, I don't know how well you could dramatize that.
I don't know. But yeah, no, I agree. I have absolutely recommended this book to people who, like, want to get into horror and have never really read horror books before. I think this is a really good kind of starter book.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, maybe read a couple others first and then read this one.
Yeah.
But definitely I've absolutely recommended this book to people. I love this book so much, and it is absolutely 5 skulls for me too. And sometimes when I say 5, it's like 4.75, but I'm rounding up. No, this is a 5.
And I think one of the reasons people have a hard time getting into it is that Stephen Graham Jones, he writes the way that he talks.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes that can be a little, esoteric and a little a stream of consciousness because, he compares himself to David Foster Wallace, which is an author that I'm like, listen, I respect him as a writer, but I don't really like his writing so much. But and a lot of his early work is kind of him chasing that. But the minute that he went full blown into the horror genre, that's where I fall in love with him, and I really think that he's one of the guys that is like redefining this subgenre of horror.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In a really, really cool way, especially in a point where I didn't even know how much more ground you could cover in it because slashers made a big comeback in recent years, and now there's a new sort of observation of that. And this is a breath of fresh air into that.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think that's it for this one.
All right.
I think,
Yes.
we'll just,
I think this is it. Let me say some more stuff.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Hey, everybody. This is actually Dylan from the future here. And I just, going back and looking through this, I realized, oh shit, there actually was something I wanted to bring up in this book, which is Stephen Graham Jones's unabiding love for Gymkata, a lost 80s cult film. What happens when you combine gymnastics with martial arts, the two biggest phenomenons of the late 80s? You get Gymkata. And this movie is, unfortunately, you can only find it on VHS through third-party sellers. It does not have a formal DVD or Blu-ray release. Somebody needs to get on that immediately. But I think that this highlight of this movie is so awesome because not only is it a stark contrast to the darkness that we'd see in Tolly's later parts of his life, but it is also just reflective of a nostalgic, innocent period of going to a video store and just finding any sort of random cult film that might be on the shelf and giving it a shot. Sometimes you get something like Gymkata, which just takes you completely by surprise. And it really is just, it's a movie that is something to behold, and I cannot thank Stephen Graham Jones enough for giving it a bunch of love and attention when no one else probably would have given it the time of day.
No, I get it.
I'm very excited to see what he does with Buffalo Hunter Hunter.
I know, I'm so psyched.
That one, it's so cool because, he has mentioned that is going to be written in, what is it called? Appository?
I don't know.
The kind of writing format where it's, documentation.
Okay,
or, journal entries and letters and stuff like that.
I don't know the term for that.
I think that's what
I do know that he abused that poor book while he was trying to read from it.
Well, he wrote that book. He can do whatever he wants. But I know you get squeamish when people just wrap the entire cover around the back of the book.
I'm not a folder. I'm not. I can't get behind that. That's that poor book. See, it's never gonna close the same again. Okay.
I get more bothered by dog earing.
See, I don't like dog earing either. But I feel like when you turn the whole cover around to behind the book, that's so much worse because then eventually the pages are gonna fall out.
Yeah.
And I don't.
And he does have another book coming out too.
Yeah.
Killer on the Road, which is also it's kind of a dual novella mixed with his other one, The Babysitter Lives, which is available on Libby right now. You can listen to. But Killer on the Road is the new one to
right.
Babysitter Lives didn't have a physical release. Now it does.
Yeah.
But Buffalo Hunter, I'm really excited to see kind of basically what his take on that Dracula format's going to be because it's about a Native American who is a vampire, and the tagline of it is I am a Native American who is a vampire. I am America's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And
I think we could use a little bit of America's Worst Nightmare right now in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Because we're getting America's Worst Nightmare the other way, and I don't like it.
Every fucking day, man. It's something else.
Well, on that note, you want to tell them what we're talking about next month, or should I do it?
Next month we're leaving this Earth as much as
Yeah, I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Yeah, and not in the SpaceX format where we're just going to blow up and die. But
oh, that's horrible.
But
anyway.
We are going to do our first dive into some science fiction horror, specifically space horror, and we're starting with S.A. Barnes's Dead Silence. Check it out. If you are a fan of stuff like Alien and more specifically Event Horizon.
I was going to say, if you don't say Event Horizon.
Yeah. Check this one out.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Everybody compares space horror to Alien, but Event Horizon is definitely a more apt comparison.
So read that book before next month.
Yep.
And you can come to our podcast next month about that book.
Yeah, and just watch us talk about it as we do every month.
Yep.
And we just do this because it's fun.
Yeah, I know. We don't have a whole lot of audience yet.
No.
And maybe we never will, but I think we're going to keep doing this because it's fun, okay?
Yeah.
This is what we get to do when we're not being parents.
Yeah. So, tune in for that episode next month. Read the book first, obviously, because we spoil the hell out of everything.
Yep.
And then outside of that, you can, if you have any suggestions for us to cover anything, you can email us at pagesfromthedarkside, all one word, @gmail.com. You can also follow me on social media at mrhyperaware.wordpress.com. I really want to get back to regularly writing for that again.
Yeah, well.
School's kicking my ass, though.
2 more months until the semester's over.
Yeah. But then I'm also, you can follow me also on Instagram and Blue Sky, also at Mr. Hyperaware. And, babe, they can find you at
babe.
on YouTube.
Yes, I'm on YouTube as the Earbud Bookworm. I still have not uploaded anything since the last episode that we did. I said I was going to upload soon, and I have not. But, again, school is kicking my ass as well, and I'm in my final semester, so... And plus, we've been playing the Sick Kid Bingo, so that's...
We do have a book call to
fun.
record, so we might have, a big, compilation to post on there.
All right. And then, that's pretty much... I don't have other social media pages. I do have a Facebook, actually, for the Earbud Bookworm, and I am about to post...
Oh.
I'm about to post a text review. I'm going to write a review.
Yeah.
Because I got an advanced reader copy of a book that I would... like to actually put out a review.
And for anybody that is wondering why there's no Facebook page for Pages from the Dark Side yet, I'll figure it out, okay?
Right, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Just be patient. All right. But
all right.
Until then, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next chapter of
Pages from the Dark Side. This has been a production of Pages from the Dark Side. Sound and video production by Alyssa and Dylan Ludwig. Music and artwork by Aaron Shively.